Welcome to the How to Start a Trucking Company web series. I'm your host, Alexandra Figueras, Director of CDL Defense here at Simplex Group. For those of you that are new to Simplex, I want to give a brief background on who we are. Simplex has been in the industry for 24 years. We offer business solution type services to trucking company owners and drivers. We've helped thousands of them over the years to get their start. I've been in the industry for 11 years now. My expertise lies in insurance, DOT compliance, and everything that has to do with licensing and permitting. I'm really excited to host this series for you guys. It was originally supposed to be one session, but we got so much demand on this topic that we decided to create an entire series. We've got a ton of content to share with you guys, so please make sure that you're signing up for future sessions. The purpose of this series is to really give you guys an overview of A to Z what you need to do to start your own trucking company. It is intended for drivers looking to start your own trucking company. It's not intended for any sort of investor type persons trying to start a trucking company, although it is a topic that we could dive into in a future session. But if there are any specific sessions that you would like for us or topics that you would like for us to dive in deep into, please leave your comments and your requests in the Q&A section of each one of the live sessions. A quick word of advice before we get started. If you're a driver with less than 2 years of experience, my suggestion is you lease on to a company where you can get experience for the 2 years. The reason for that is because insurance companies have strict guidelines around drivers with insufficient experience. Essentially, they exclude drivers with less than 2 years of a CDL. Although there are insurance companies out there that do offer coverage for drivers with less than 2 years, it does tend to be pretty expensive, oftentimes requiring really high down payments or deductibles, and sometimes they even require hefty collateral to bind the policy in the form of either an asset or cash. So it does become cost prohibitive very quickly. So, I want to make sure that you guys are well prepared and aware of some of these things. So my recommendation is lease onto a large company. Their insurance policies tend to be more tolerant of drivers with less than the 2 years of experience. While you're gaining your 2 years of experience, try different routes, work with different types of equipment, work with different types of cargo, really see what you like and where your strengths lie so that when you do decide to make that jump from driver to trucking company owner, you're better prepared. All right, so let's get started. You are looking to be a trucking company owner now. Okay, you're no longer a driver, and it's important to switch your mindset when you decide to make this transition. There are key differences between being a driver and the owner of a company. One of them is financial risk. So all of that responsibility now falls on you. Talking about insurance, talking about licensing, permits, anything that you have to, anything that's financial that you have to spend money on, even repairs, even loans, right? All of that now falls on you. There's also regulatory compliance risk that you have to be aware of. That's now your responsibility. Audits, when you get audited, and you will get audited within your first 18 months of operations, you now need to comply with that audit. You need to be prepared for that audit. There are going to be record keeping requirements that you need to comply with. If you get a violation, what was once your former employer's responsibility now falls on you. It's going to impact your safety score, which could impact your insurance, which could also affect your ability to get better paying loads. And the last thing is going to be your operational risk. Every business decision is now up to you. So you need to make sure that you have your finances in order, that you are making smart decisions when it comes to expenses, that you have enough funds to get you from week to week, month to month, to pay for your insurance, to pay for your truck or trailer loan, to pay for repairs. I don't want to scare you now. I do encourage you to follow your dreams and become an entrepreneur and start your own company. I just want to make sure that I remind you guys that that responsibility now all solely falls on you. So I want you to be prepared because you want to be able to run a successful business. So if you are ready to take that leap, you've come to the right place. So the next thing you're going to start figuring out is what business structure is right for you. I'm not going to provide any recommendations here. I'm not an expert on this. I do recommend that you do speak to an attorney or an accountant that can better explain what your tax liabilities are, what your regulatory requirements are. They're the ones that can really explain all of that to you. So please consult with a legal or tax professional. So now you've set up your company, you have the right structure in place, you've filed it. The next thing you're going to be thinking about is what type of cargo are you going to be hauling? Recommendation here is base it off of experience. But if you do decide to venture into a type of cargo that's new to you, make sure that you do your research and get experience. It's not the same thing to haul groceries than to haul hazardous materials. Another thing you want to do is avoid mixing cargo and equipment that are incompatible. This is a red flag for insurance. They do have to insure the cargo. So if you are mixing cargoes and equipment that are vastly different, they're not going to insure you. One example of an acceptable combination is a dry van and reefer. An example of an unacceptable combination is going to be reefer and an auto hauler. As you can see, two very different types of cargo, very different types of equipment and skill that you need to handle those types of cargo. So choosing the right cargo or choosing the cargo that's best for you is going to help you determine your classification of operations. So we said we're going to first focus on cargo. Are you going to haul general freight or specialized freight like hazardous materials or some exempt commodities? And then you need to determine, are you going to be a for-hire carrier or a private carrier? Now, the difference here lies in who you're hauling the cargo for, and then how you get paid. So if you're going to be a for-hire carrier, you're going to be transporting cargo that is owned by other people or passengers for that matter, that you do for a fee. When you're a private carrier, you're going to be hauling your own cargo that you own, and that you transport in your own vehicles, in your own trucks. This is all, if we think of a type of carrier that falls within that realm, we can think of Walmart or IKEA. The next thing you're going to do is determine what type of operations you're going to engage in for interstate or intrastate. Intrastate essentially means that you're going to be crossing state lines. So if you're going to be leaving the state in which you're domiciled, that means you're engaging in interstate operations. If you're going to be only operating within your base state, so the state where you're domiciled, you are going to be engaging in intrastate operations. And then the last thing you're going to figure out is, what is your radius of operations? So you need to determine, are you going to be a long haul carrier or are you going to be a short haul carrier? The reason for this is because there are different regulatory compliance needs. Long haul, generally speaking, you're going to have to comply with hours of service rules and regulations. When you're short haul, as long as you stay within the 150 air mile radius, you could benefit from some hours of service exemptions. So the next thing you're going to be focusing on is determining what type of equipment you're going to need. So now you've selected your cargo, and now you know what your classification of operations. Now you need to figure out, okay, what is the equipment that I need to have in order to transport that cargo, in order to drive those distances. So on your screen, you're going to see some examples of some common cargoes and some truck and trailer combinations. You just have to choose what's the right one, again, for you, for the cargo that you're hauling and the distances that you're going to be driving. The next thing you're going to need to determine is, what are your driver licensing needs? Now, what determines your driver licensing needs is going to be the cargo that you're going to carry, the equipment that you're going to use, but also your weight class. So as you see on the screen, you have some examples and the requirements of the different types of license classes. You have all three commercial driver's license classes, and then we have an example of a non-CDL operations. So once you have your license selected, then you need to determine if you need to obtain any endorsements. And again, this boils down to the type of operations that you're going to be engaging in. So we're halfway there. We're now getting into permitting. So everyone's going to need to obtain a US DOT number. That's the first thing you're going to apply for. The next thing is, if you are an interstate carrier or you're an intrastate carrier that enters the port or airport, you're going to apply for what's called an operating authority. Following that, you're going to file your BOC3 and your UCR. So once you have your DOT number, you're going to go into the insurance quoting process. Now, insurance is a pretty complex topic. We actually decided to separate it into its own session. That's actually our next session on September 24th. There's a lot that goes into insurance, understanding what are the how it impacts cargo and your operations, and the processing times and the upfront costs, right? So all of this is going to be covered in our next session. So for the sake of preserving that information for our next session, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump right into your state licensing and permitting needs. So let's assume you've bound insurance at this point. So you have insurance in hand. You're going to start thinking about how you need to register your vehicle so you can get rolling. The first thing you need to do is file your road taxes, what's also known as your 2290. If you register your vehicles at 55,000 pounds or above, you have to have this filing done, and that's part of what you're going to provide in your vehicle registration application. Now, at this point, it really depends on your type of operation. If you are an intrastate carrier, you're going to go ahead and apply for a local commercial registration in your base state. But if you are an interstate carrier, you're going to apply for an IRP, or the International Registration Plan, also known as the CAB card. And this is your registration for your vehicle, and it's going to allow you to cross state lines. Once that registration is approved and issued, you can go ahead and apply for your IFTA license. This is another permit that you're going to need in order to cross state lines. Once you have your IRP, you can start determining what is, again, your radius of operations. What's your route? What states are you going to pass through to do your operations? So there are states that do require additional permitting. They require it whether you're domiciled in their state or not, and they require it whether you have a load or not. So even if you're just passing through, they're going to require for you to obtain a permit. As long as there are certain weight requirements that you meet. Those states are New York, Kentucky, New Mexico, and Oregon. These permits are called weight distance permits. Essentially, what that means is these states will tax you depending on the miles that you travel in their states during a specific time period. The next states that require additional state permitting, they require this permitting for motor carriers that are domiciled in their states. So Texas is one that requires intrastate carriers to apply for what's called a Texas DOT number. So this is in addition to your US DOT number. And then California carriers are required to apply for an MCP and a California number. So that's a wrap for today's session, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I'm actually being told that we have a few minutes for maybe a question or two. It seems like we're getting a lot of questions around processing times and startup costs. Okay, so that's actually a very good question. This is actually something that we're going to cover in a later session. So first, what we wanted to do is lay the groundwork for you guys, help you guys really understand what is the process, what is the sequence of events that you have to follow, then dive into insurance, because again, it's a pretty complex process. And it really affects your operation. So we really want you guys to understand that. And then we'll go back to this session and we'll work through what are the processing times and the upfront costs of each one of these permits and these processes when it comes to starting your business. The other question that we got a lot of is talking about funding. So that's a great question. There are a lot of options for small businesses with the SBA. You could reach out to them. They're a fantastic resource for small businesses. So I do suggest reaching out to them and seeing what your options are. So I think that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure that you sign up to our next session. I'm your host, Alexandra. I'll see you in the next one.